pictures, and then go and sit quietly in his office. Sooner or later, some professional informer, spurned girlfriend, or disgruntled rival would ring up and tell him who the real villain was. Provided the suggested culprit was a reasonable possibility, the detective reviewed and adjusted what evidence he had so that it pointed in the right direction, and, usually, that was that. Another professional criminal was tucked up safely behind bars. Professional. Ah, yes. That was the crux of the matter. Dover loathed murder because most murderers are amateurs and just don't want to play the game according to the established rules. Why, even when the neighbours know perfectly well who croaked that Mrs. Jones at number 7, do they ever think of telling the police? Not likely they don't. Not on your Nelly. They start remembering how often they themselves had wanted to croak Mrs. Jones and what good and lurid reasons they had for doing so. They fear, not without some justification, that the police are likely to take the thought for the deed, and they begin hedging and lying and generally messing things up until the poor wretched creature in charge of the case actually has to start looking for clues and making deductions. No. Chief Inspector Dover definitely didn't like murder cases. There was too much hard work and trouble attached to them, and this sleeping beauty business, from what little he knew about it, looked like being a real stinker. In the first place, the actual crime had been committed way back in February, nearly 8 months ago. The victim, a girl called Isobel Slatcher, had been shot in one of the quieter streets of Curdley at about 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. The gun used, an untraceable German Luger, had been dropped beside the body. Needless to say, it had been wiped clean of any fingerprints. The girl had not been killed outright, although she had been shot in the head at close quarters. She had been rushed to the local hospital and there had been an emergency operation which, no doubt, had saved her life. But she had never regained consciousness. While the local police had tried, unsuccessfully, to find her attacker, the girl had lingered on in a coma until she had died the day before Dover's arrival in Curdley. Now it was a murder case, and the chief constable had called in the yard. It had been some not very original journalist who had first thought of calling Isobel Slatcher the Sleeping Beauty. It was the kind of romantic label that the press likes, although, strictly speaking, Miss Slatcher was not asleep, nor was she a beauty. Chief Inspector Dover wasn't very optimistic about his chances of solving the case after all this time. Most of his cases he never solved anyhow, but he belligerently attributed this to the fact that the sticky ones were always unfairly shoved onto him. There may have been a faint whiff of truth in this because the Assistant Commissioner, Crime, couldn't stand the sight of him. This feeling was mutual, and ruthlessly pushed him out on cases which were located in the remote provinces whenever he got the chance. Dover finished his cigarette and dropped the end with a sizzle into his teacup. He sighed heavily and thought longingly of bed. Sergeant McGregor broke the silence. Otherwise Dover might have gone on sitting there all day. "I'd better go and phone the Chief Constable, hadn't I, sir?" he said. "Just to let him know we've arrived." Dover regarded his sergeant sourly. "All right," he grumbled. "You do that." As McGregor strode out of the dining room, Dover indolently surveyed his surroundings. At a nearby table, somebody had left a newspaper. With a quite remarkable turn of speed for so weighty a man, Dover got to his feet to fetch it. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted that a rather elderly, bent woman had got designs on it too. He unsportingly increased his pace and grabbed the paper just before the old lady could lay a hand on it. He treated her to a small smirk of triumph and returned to his table happy in the knowledge that, once again, he'd got something for nothing. He opened the newspaper and the smile faded quickly from his fat, pasty face. The nostrils of his tiny snub nose flared and his piggy little eyes narrowed with sheer fury as he read the headlines. "Bigamous Bertie hanged," they screamed. "Last tribute to Super Percy." Green with envy, he plodded sulkily on through the story. Cuthbert Boys, whose exploits had kept the British public in raptures for months, had now finally got his just deserts at the end of a rope. Secure in the knowledge that under his sobriquet of Bigamous Bertie, he had passed into history as surely as Crippen or Joseph Smith. There was no need for the paper to give a detailed obituary for Bertie. Dover, in common with every other literate person in the country, knew the whole story by heart. Briefly, Bigamous Bertie had, over a period of 10 years, gone through a form of marriage with